You know, usually when you look at a blueprint for a roller coaster, you expect to see the standard elements, right? Like the loops, the steep drops, the lap bars.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Uh,
built for a very specific, highly calculated thrill.
right, and it serves a straightforward purpose. You get on the ride, you scream your lungs out for 2 minutes, you get off, and I mean, you buy a funnel cake.
It was just a controlled, isolated burst of adrenaline.
But imagine if, while you were strapped into that roller coaster, blasting forward at 100 miles an hour, someone sitting next to you is desperately trying to read you a dense, emotionally tragic family epic.
Oh man, that sounds exhausting.
Right. And not only that, but while you are flying through the air, construction crews are laying the architectural groundwork for a massive intergalactic political thriller all around you on the track.
Well, that sounds like a recipe for either a groundbreaking narrative experience that totally redefines the medium,
Or
or
just complete sensory overload.
exactly, just complete and total sensory overload that leaves you dizzy.
And that dizzying landscape is exactly what we are navigating today as we jump into our deep dive on the Super Mario Galaxy movie. So welcome in.
Let it be here.
Our mission today is to give you the ultimate spoiler-filled story recap, a breakdown of that totally wild ending, and a balanced review of what is currently projected to be the first $1 billion movie of the year.
It's a massive juggernaut.
Yeah.
And we've pulled together a huge stack of sources to guide us through this.
Yeah, we are looking at comprehensive reviews from outlets like Nintendo Life and Plugged In, deep analytical video essays from Game Explain.
Plus some really intricate lore breakdowns from the Heroes Wiki
Yeah.
and technical Easter egg guides from Decked Out magazine.
Which is a phenomenal stack of information, largely because this movie is fiercely dividing critics and the audience is actually sitting in the theaters.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because if you look closely beneath all the colorful, high-octane visual spectacle, there is actually a massive lore expansion happening here.
Something that fundamentally changes the rules of the Mario universe going forward. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how this movie delivers its massive story to you, we first have to examine the mechanical way the film was actually built.
Right. The pacing dictates absolutely everything else that happens on screen.
So let's start by laying out the core plot setup, just so we have our baseline.
Good idea. So the narrative kicks off when Bowser Jr. captures Princess Rosalina.
Okay.
Now, she is known in this universe as the Mother of the Stars. And Bowser Jr. captures her using a massive, terrifying mech called the Megaleg.
Which, if you haven't seen it, picture a mechanical, heavily armored spider the size of a literal skyscraper.
It's intense. And his ultimate goal is to siphon off her cosmic energy to power something called a Boomsday Machine,
Right.
which is essentially a universe-threatening superweapon. But the really interesting part is that the director, Shigeru Miyamoto, and the animation studio Illumination decided to tell this story.
Yeah, because there's a very specific architectural choice they made regarding the pacing, which stems from Miyamoto's philosophy on modern audiences, right?
That is the crucial context here. Miyamoto stated very clearly in interviews that he did not want kids to be bored, checking out, or running around the aisles in movie theaters.
Which, makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But to prevent that, the filmmakers utilized what they internally call 3-minute chunks.
So, wait, how does a 3-minute chunk actually function mechanically in a film? Does a literal timer go off or something?
It is practically a structural constraint. Think of it as a modular unit of storytelling.
Okay.
The filmmakers structured the movie so that every 180 seconds, the audience receives a complete cycle. You get a joke, a piece of exposition, and a massive kinetic action sequence.
Wow.
Yeah, there are roughly 30 of these self-contained 3-minute chunks mathematically slotted into the 90-minute film.
That sounds exhausting. It feels a lot like watching a TikTok feed of a movie. As a
Yeah.
viewer, you were just getting these constant dopamine hits with absolutely zero downtime.
That's a great comparison.
But I have to push back on Miyamoto's philosophy here a little bit. Does assuming the audience has zero attention span actually ruin the movie's momentum?
Well, that's the big debate.
I mean, if you treat scenes like interchangeable Lego bricks, doesn't the film start to lose its narrative connective tissue?
You hit the nail on the head because that is the exact friction point reviewers zeroed in on.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This modular structure makes the overarching plot feel incredibly thin and disjointed at times because the movie is just violently jumping from one high-octane set piece to the next.
Right.
Viewers were left totally confused about basic mechanical plot points.
I can personally attest to that, actually. I was sitting in the theater, and there is this moment where a giant UFO suddenly drops Princess Peach's castle out of the sky.
Yep, I know the exact scene.
And I must have blinked because I completely missed why the castle fell. What actually happened mechanically in that scene?
It is incredibly easy to miss. What happens is that during the fight, a leveling control panel on the ground gets smashed. That triggers the giant megaleg mech to shoot upward into the belly of the UFO.
Oh, I see.
And the physical impact of the mech hitting the ship severs the tractor beam tether that was holding the castle in the air.
Oh,
But all of that happens in about 3 seconds. The connective tissue is sacrificed at the altar of pacing.
so the movie just completely refuses to hit the brakes.
And that refusal to slow down has a cascading effect on the characters.
Definitely.
Because the movie moves at this breakneck, 3-minute chunk speed, its biggest and most shocking character reveals end up feeling entirely rushed and unearned.
Which brings us to the massive lore drop about Princess Peach. Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone who has followed these games for years.
Oh, absolutely.
The movie drops an absolute bombshell halfway through. Princess Peach and Rosalina are actually long-lost sisters.
It fundamentally rewrites the history of the franchise.
It really does.
The movie establishes that they aren't standard mortal humans at all. They are celestial beings entirely made of stardust.
Right. And this origin grants them immense magical abilities. I mean, we see them performing acts of levitation, manipulating raw cosmic energy, projecting force fields.
Yeah, the backstory we get reveals that when they were young children, a group of unidentified dark forces attacked their home.
So to protect her baby sister, Rosalina shoved an infant Peach through a dimensional warp pipe.
Right, sending her to the Mushroom Kingdom for her own safety. Rosalina then stayed behind in the cosmos to become the adoptive mother of the starlight creatures known as Lumos.
Okay, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If you're telling me that Princess Peach is essentially a cosmic superhero made of literal stardust,
Yeah.
doesn't that retroactively lower the stakes of the first movie? If she has all this godlike power, why was she so seemingly helpless when Bowser was attacking Brooklyn the first time around?
That glaring tension is exactly what film critics highlighted in their breakdowns.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
If you step back and look at the bigger picture, this incredibly rich, dramatic backstory was largely viewed as a massive missed opportunity.
Totally.
And it all traces back to that pacing mechanism we just discussed. The film simply refused to dedicate the runtime for a proper emotional flashback.
So it doesn't explain how these powers lay dormant or dig into the trauma of their separation as children?
Not at all. It really just feels like, boom, we are magical sisters, grab a mushroom, let's get back to the laser explosions.
It is whiplash-inducing.
It is. The deep dive videos from Game Explain actually surfaced a very popular fan critique regarding this.
Oh, what was that?
They pointed out that the movie should have slowed down and utilized a stylized storybook sequence to explain this history.
Oh, wait, like the actual Rosalina storybook from the original 2007 video game?
Precisely that. In the game, there is a beautifully quiet, pastel-illustrated storybook sequence where Rosalina narrates her tragic past.
That would have been perfect.
Right. If the movie had adapted that, perhaps shifting the animation style to look like watercolor paintings for 5 minutes, it would have provided the audience with that necessary emotional breathing room.
It would have made the sisterly bond feel earned rather than just, stated.
Exactly.
It is a strange irony, though. The hero's backstory violently struggles to find any breathing room, but somehow the movie manages to give its villains the deepest, most methodical, emotional arcs of the entire film.
It is a fascinating contradiction, isn't it?
It really is.
Let's analyze Bowser's journey here. Following his crushing defeat in the first film, he isn't just locked in a dungeon.
Right, he is actively undergoing psychological rehabilitation in the Mushroom Kingdom.
And Luigi, of all people, has taken it upon himself to be his sponsor.
I love that. Luigi even takes a shrunken-down version of Bowser to a weekly community book club.
It's brilliant visual comedy.
I have to say, the visual image of this terrifying spike-shelled turtle dragon sitting in a tiny wooden chair, passionately discussing literature and his feelings, it's just comedic gold.
It is, but it also serves a real narrative purpose.
Yeah.
Bowser is genuinely doing the work.
Okay.
He is getting in touch with his feelings, managing his anger, and finding a sense of inner peace.
But meanwhile, out in the vastness of space, his son, Bowser Jr., is spiraling.
Totally. Bowser Jr.'s entire motivation for building this horrific mechanical lava planet and kidnapping Rosalina is simply a desperate attempt to free his dad and earn his affection.
Yo, man.
And when father and son finally reunite on the battlefield, Bowser does unfortunately backslide into villainy.
Natural.
But the movie goes out of its way to show you that there is a genuine, unconditional familial bond between them.
So what you have is essentially a cosmic custody battle mixed with an inverted redemption arc.
That's a great way to put it.
You have to appreciate the irony that the giant, fire-breathing antagonist gets a significantly more complete and nuanced psychological arc than the actual title character, Mario.
That is a very astute observation. I mean, Mario remains mostly static, serving as the vehicle for the action.
Right.
But there are specific, quiet moments that really sell Bowser's growth.
Like what?
Well, at one crucial juncture, Bowser voluntarily surrenders himself to the Honey Queen's worker bees to allow the heroes to escape a trap.
Oh, wow. He actually put someone else first.
Yes. And later on, Mario actually stops to recognize Bowser's humanity.
That's a big deal.
It sets up this highly complex, mature dynamic where the heroes and villains actually start to understand the underlying motivations driving each other.
Okay, so we have all these emotional plates spinning. We have this core theme surrounding family, both the reunited Stardust Sisters trying to understand their past, and the father-son Koopa duo trying to secure their future.
Right.
And all of this thematic weight collides spectacularly in the film's chaotic third act.
And what a third act it is. It is a massive, screen-shaking intergalactic brawl.
Pure chaos.
During the fight, Bowser falls into a volatile pool of cosmic lava.
Oh, yeah.
But instead of dying, he terrifyingly rises from the molten rock as the skeletal dry Bowser, declaring himself the Lord of Bones.
Which, I mean, if you are a 6-year-old sitting in the front row, that has to be pure nightmare fuel.
It definitely pushes the boundaries of a family rating, for sure.
Absolutely.
The climax essentially resolves on two parallel fronts. On the first front, Mario manages to acquire a red star power-up.
Uh-oh.
This physically transforms him into a levitating human missile wrapped in red energy.
Cool.
But here is the twist. He doesn't use this immense power to destroy Bowser Jr.
He doesn't.
No, instead he shows mercy. He uses his velocity to intercept and save Bowser Jr. from a giant, gooey, chaotic dragon that the young prince had accidentally summoned with his own magic paintbrush.
So showing mercy to the villain's son. That pays off the earlier moment of Mario recognizing Bowser's capacity for good.
Exactly. It fundamentally breaks the cycle of violence between them.
I love that.
Meanwhile, on the second front, the sisterly bond reaches its crescendo. Peach and Rosalina finally manage to connect their hands through the thick glass of Rosalina's cosmic prison cell. They trigger what the lore wiki refers to as their sibling synergy. But crucially, they don't use their combined cosmic power to fire a bigger laser or create more bloodshed.
Wait, so how do they stop a universe-ending machine if they aren't blowing it up?
Well, they use their power to forcibly create life.
Create life.
Yeah, they channel an immense wave of stardust energy that causes hyper-accelerated organic growth.
Oh, wow.
Massive vines, ancient roots, and blooming flowers physically tear through the metal cogs and steel plating of the Boomsday machine, completely shattering it from the inside out.
That's wild.
Within seconds, they transform Bowser Jr.'s mechanical lava base into a lush, green, vibrant utopia.
Let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. After an hour and a half of nonstop explosions, laser blasts, and high-speed space battles, they defeated the ultimate weapon of mass destruction with aggressive gardening.
I mean, that is a very colorful way to phrase it, but on a mechanical level, yes.
That is hilarious.
But if you unpack the thematic weight of that specific choice, it is actually quite profound.
How so?
It proves to the audience that the sisters' powers are fundamentally anchored in creation and nurturing life.
I see.
This stands in direct ideological contrast to Bowser Jr.'s weaponized, destructive approach to controlling the universe. It is a philosophical victory, not just a physical one.
That makes a lot of sense.
After the dust settles, the heroes return home to rebuild Peach's destroyed castle. And the narrative officially concludes with Mario using a cape feather to glide gracefully to the top of a newly built flagpole.
Which is just a perfect visual homage to the classic games.
It really is.
So Mario gliding down that flagpole closes the book on this specific narrative. But Illumination wasn't just building a single story here, were they?
Not at all.
They were laying the concrete for a multi-lane, multi-franchise highway. If you look in the background of almost every single scene, this movie is furiously laying the groundwork for a massive, interconnected future.
The density of Easter eggs peppered throughout the frame is truly staggering. It requires multiple viewings just to process them all.
I believe it.
The Gateway Galaxy location of the film acts as a sort of multiverse transit hub.
Okay.
If you were watching the background characters closely, you can see ROB, the robotic operating buddy, peripheral from the 1985 Nintendo Entertainment System, acting as an information kiosk assistant.
I completely missed that.
You can also spot tiny alien Pikmin boarding a red onion-shaped rocket, confirming that Captain Olimar's universe is out there.
Nice.
You even see Wart, the main antagonist from Super Mario Bros. 2, operating in the shadows as a cosmic crime lord.
And it goes beyond just the space stuff, too. If you were paying attention during the sequence set on Earth in New York City, you can clearly see Little Mac and Doc Louie from the boxing game Punch-Out jogging down the sidewalk in their signature sweatsuits.
Yes, it is a technical marvel of fan service.
Totally.
But what takes it to the next level is that some cameos go far beyond just background dressing. Fox McCloud, the anthropomorphic pilot from the Star Fox franchise, is actually a major supporting character with dialogue in this movie.
Right, he shows up as a mercenary pilot whose R-wing fighter jet gets heavily damaged during a dogfight.
Exactly that. And his inclusion provides a massive narrative tool.
How so?
At the end of the film, Rosalina uses her magic to repair his ship. This allows Fox to engage in interdimensional warp drive, tearing a hole in space-time so he can return to his home reality.
Wow, so that just breaks the whole universe wide open.
Completely. And the studio makes sure you know the universe is expanding even further in the post-credit scenes.
Of course.
First, we see a nihilistic, depressing Blue Lanema named Lumley taunting Bowser and his son in their new cosmic prison cell.
Classic.
And in the final scene, Princess Daisy makes her highly anticipated movie debut.
Finally.
She's sporting a rugged athletic sports spec design, and we see her physically punching out a thieving monkey named Yukiki in a desert landscape.
Okay, I have to ask you about the mechanics of this franchise building. Does Fox McCloud actually belong in the narrative structure of a Mario movie?
That is the million-dollar question.
Or is the studio just cynically using his screen time as a 2-hour commercial to set up an eventual Super Smash Bros. Crossover event?
That specific question is causing a massive rift among critics right now.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The reviewers are heavily divided on the ethics of this kind of storytelling. Some critics felt that Fox's 2-minute backstory dump was incredibly jarring.
I can see that.
They argued it was completely unnecessary to the emotional core of the plot, and that he was essentially just taking up valuable space that should have been given to Peach and Rosalina.
But I imagine the other side sees it as a necessary evil for universe building.
They do. Others viewed his interdimensional warp drive as an elegant narrative vehicle.
Interesting.
By officially introducing the concept of a warp hole that can cross realities, the writers provided the studio with the exact mechanical tool they need to logically connect all these disparate Nintendo properties down the line.
Ah, so it formally establishes what many are now calling the Nintendo Cinematic Universe.
Exactly. The NCU.
So what does this all mean for you, the viewer? With all these individual puzzle pieces scattered on the table, the frenetic, exhausting pacing, the surprisingly rich lore drops, the touching character beats with the villains, and the blatant franchise building, how does the final product actually hold up?
Let's dive into the balanced review.
It really comes down to a battle of spectacle versus substance, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The critical consensus is a near-perfect split down the middle.
Wow.
On one side of the aisle, you have reviewers who gave it a rather harsh 37 out of 100 on Metacritic.
Yikes.
The outlet Nintendo Life gave it a 6 out of 10, labeling it a faithful but painfully overstuffed sequel.
Overstuffed is a good word for it.
Their primary critique, as we discussed, is that it's plagued by clunky pacing and a fundamental inability to let its emotional moments breathe.
The dreaded 3-minute chunk formula coming back to bite them.
Precisely. However, if you look at the other side of the aisle, the sheer visual spectacle of the film is being universally praised.
Which makes sense. It looks incredible.
The animation team utilized techniques inspired by 65mm VistaVision.
And for anyone who doesn't spend their weekends reading cinematography textbooks, what does VistaVision actually mean for the viewing experience?
Great question. It essentially means the movie was framed and shot to mimic an ultra-wide, high-resolution film format.
Oh, cool.
It makes the sweeping space vistas feel impossibly massive and bursting with vibrant, overwhelming color.
That sounds amazing.
Furthermore, the audio experience is a massive upgrade. Composer Brian Tyler's orchestral score, especially his soaring, emotional rendition of the Good Egg Galaxy theme, is being hailed as a triumph.
Which is a huge relief, honestly, because the studio completely ditched those distracting pop music needle drops from the first film.
Thank goodness for that.
You know, when they would just abruptly pause the orchestral score to play an 80s pop song because it tested well with audiences.
Right, removing those needle drops allowed the movie to feel timeless rather than like a trendy music video. And perhaps the most important metric of all, the audiences, and specifically the kids sitting in the theaters, are completely obsessed with it.
And if you think about it, I think that is the real insight to take away from this entire deep dive.
How so?
Well, if the target audience is sitting in the dark, giggling with delight every 2 minutes, and begging their parents to go buy the video games the second the credits roll,
Yeah.
maybe the critics are making a fundamental mistake. You can't grade a vibrant loop-de-loop roller coaster using the rubric designed for a slow-burn prestige drama.
That is a very fair point, and it validates both perspectives.
Right.
It is absolutely a legitimate cinematic flaw that a rapid-fire modular formula robs the characters of their psychological depth and emotional resonance.
Sure.
But if you evaluate it purely as a piece of visual joy and dedicated, meticulous fan service, it fundamentally succeeds at exactly what it set out to accomplish.
I completely agree. So, to summarize our deep dive for you today, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is a hyper-paced, visually dazzling explosion of Nintendo fan service. It successfully expands the lore of the universe, it delivers a surprisingly touching psychological arc with Bowser and his son, and it lays the concrete for a sprawling cinematic multiverse that goes far beyond the borders of the Mushroom Kingdom.
It is a movie that asks you to strap in, hold on tight, and enjoy the rush of the ride, even if you can clearly see the track being built right in front of your eyes.
Beautifully put. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final mystery to chew on.
Ooh, I love a good mystery.
Think back to that massive lore drop we discussed earlier regarding Peach and Rosalina. We know they were separated as children because they had to hide from, quote-unquote, unidentified dark forces who desperately wanted to steal their cosmic Stardust powers.
Right.
But if you look at the board at the end of the movie, Bowser and his son are defeated and locked in a cosmic prison,
They are.
which means those dark forces are still unnamed and totally unresolved.
Which means whoever or whatever orchestrated that attack is still out there.
Exactly. That is the chilling part. Who or what is truly lurking out there in the darkest corners of the cosmos?
That is a scary thought.
Could this missing piece of lore be the deliberate setup for an entirely new, terrifying antagonist in movie number 3?
It's definitely possible.
I want you to ponder what kind of universal threat could possibly be so vast, so powerful, that it would require the combined interdimensional forces of Mario, Fox McCloud, and Princess Daisy to stop it.
When you frame it like that, it really changes how you view that roller coaster blueprint we talked about at the very beginning.
It really does. You finally get off to ride, your heart is pounding, you survive the loops and the terrifying drops, but then you look closely at the steel track ahead and you realize it doesn't end at the station. It just keeps going, right out into the dark.